Hello, I'm Mike Montague. I'm here with Arif Khan, and this is Hitting Home, and we're talking real estate today. And today we're going to focus a little bit on just the changes and trends with house purchasing, and just how over time things have shifted.
Absolutely. Welcome back. Good to have you back. Good to be here. It is interesting. I mean, we've had a lot go on in the past year. We've talked about that with a number of our guests.
Yeah.
Certainly the pressures that the different levels of government have put on in response to what they've seen in the trends, wanting to cool the market, wanting to address consumer debt, want to look at certain habits and trends of the apparent influence of foreign buyers, et cetera. And all along, you, me, our fellow neighbors, have had to sort of play catch up and keep up in terms of what's next for us. How do all these rules affect us wanting to buy maybe our first home or wanting to buy a resale home or an investment property?
And what that first home will look like. And where we're going today is looking at how the condominium concept as a purchase,
where does it fit in?
Where does it fit in?
Yeah.
And I mean, more people are looking at it now. There was a time, you know, in our lifetimes where you thought of the condominium as the single guy, the young couple perhaps buying it before they had a family. And now you're seeing more and more. I was just in Toronto for an Ontario Real Estate Association conference, and we stayed in the downtown. Lots of new condos have been built down there in the last little while. And we're wandering around Richmond Street, Queen Street, and something you never used to see down there when I lived down there 20 years ago that you're seeing today is young mothers pushing strollers. It almost seems like a suburban neighborhood. People are embracing the condo lifestyle there, and it's starting to shift up here to Barrie. A lot of that condominium product is coming on board. It's a directive that the province has created, wanting more intensification within the residential, the built areas of Barrie. And so we're seeing more of that. And just the cost to build is dictating that that type of product is coming on. And also with the heightened prices that can be commanded for a condo now, a lot of the developers are looking at this as great opportunity. So
well, Mike,
you're quite familiar with that, working with the city. So.
Absolutely, you're right though. And if you back up just a little bit, I mean, our country is relatively new on the world stage, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in terms of our actual age, and whether you take it back a generation or two. There was the thing called the Canadian dream for many, also on the world stage. It's the American dream. It's home ownership, and what does that look like? But if you go back to where many of our families have immigrated from, those folks were living in higher density areas. Apartments were very normal. Home ownership itself wasn't all normal, and they came to Canada to buy a house.
And you, being the seasoned world traveler that you are in the last few years, taking your kids around the world, tell me what you've seen in some of the bigger cities in Italy, where you've been in the last few years. How do those cities, downtowns, even comparably sized cities, how do they compare to Barrie in what the ideal living model is? What's different?
Well, I will tell you this. The biggest thing that I noticed was actually the look on my children's face.
Yes, for sure.
Because what they've always known was what they've always had in terms of living here in
the typical subdivision
in Canada
layout that we're familiar with for residential. Yeah,
absolutely. And to be fair, I mean, if you go outside of the urban settings and you go into the farmland, if you go into the rolling mountains, et cetera, of various places of Europe, you will find people living in farms. You will find people living in village communities, et cetera. But they're still closely knit. They're still very closely knit. There is the idea of the village market. There is the baker, there's the butcher, there's the fishmonger, et cetera, the fruit market. But living in the metropolitan areas, when we were in Rome or when we were in, even when we were in Hong Kong, I mean, it's very close living. It is dense living.
Multi-millions of people. City the size of Barrie, which is kind of borderline going from the small town feel into an urban center over the last 10 years. Now we're somewhere around 150, going to be over 200 shortly.
I would offer you this, Mike. Canada, as vast as a country it is geographically, we have a fraction, just a very small fraction of the population. We're not normal.
No.
We're not normal. But that being said, Barrie is a large
we're
urban
not the norm
metropolitan
sounds much better
area.
than we're not normal. I would suppose.
Okay, so fair enough, fair enough.
Okay.
We're not the norm. But if you look at the GTA in general as well, I mean, we are a very dense community, highly populated community. And so it only stands to reason. And I think what we're looking at fiscally as well as a nation and as a province is we've recognized over the last couple of decades that urban sprawl is unsustainable from a financial perspective, from an economic perspective. It's one thing to pave the new roads, but at some point they got to get paid for.
Yes.
And who is the taxpayer that's paying them? There is no government, remember? We the people are the government. We the people fund the government on a daily basis. The government doesn't have its own money. They have our money.
Oh, yes, they do.
They have a lot of our money. And what we've come to realize is that it's extremely expensive to maintain urban sprawl.
Yeah, and that plays into it too, as economics, into why we're seeing that shift. I wouldn't say we're seeing a shift over to condominiums, we're just seeing that as a more viable option that's being recognized by new families.
So you touched on a point.
At any point in their life, we're looking at condominium. And I think part of the reason why, economically, is the price of homes, be it a condo or a detached home, have increased so much and are taking a bigger chunk of our incomes in comparison to what it took from our parents or from us even when we purchased. Plus the model for work has shifted. Not everybody's working 9 to 5. People are working weekends and that. People don't have the time to maintain the exterior of a detached house.
So I think that's actually the bigger key, Mike. I mean, I don't know how many people, I know that when I go about my life in my own bubble, my own personal bubble, my family bubble, I don't walk around necessarily thinking, well, I wonder how the municipality or how the province is going to be able to afford this and sustain this. I don't think that's a normal conversation, the inside voice for many people all the time. I'm not saying nobody takes that into consideration. I'm saying on a daily basis. What I do think people think about on the daily basis is that second point that you talked about, or really actually your initial point when you said you were down in Toronto and you saw all of the people, whether it was a young lady pushing her stroller, going into or out of a condominium. Why is that happening? And it is about the lifestyle. It is about quality of life. We are telecommuting more, or we're finding that it's better quality of life to not commute and to live
time
right in
and
Toronto.
money are the two most valuable and pressed commodities that we have, and they're being challenged more and more with time. So it's causing us to reassess.
So what I'm hoping
what the average home should be.
What I'm hoping we can do when we come back after the break is that we can actually break down some of those differences in what it is like to live in a home that is a single detached home versus what it is like to live in a condominium. Not necessarily from the dollars and cents, but really in terms of the quality of life and because for people who are looking at buying their first home or their next home, I think the goal really should be start with the end in mind. Right? It shouldn't be about, well, I saw a nice condo over here and I saw a nice home, single detached over here. I'll buy either one.
What are your needs? What are you looking to achieve? Which product fits best to
Work
that?
backwards and figure out which one suits your needs most. So,
and we'll shed a little light on the whole concept of condominium as well, because I think for some, if you haven't done it before, you're really not aware of how the condominium corporation and process functions.
Well, certainly, especially if you're coming from it from the perspective of either currently living at home with parents, you may or may not have had this conversation, or if you're coming from a perspective of I've been a renter for the last few years and I'm looking at purchasing my first personal home. You may not have.
There's things to
know the questions to ask.
And there's fears that maybe are unsubstantiated with regard to condominium. So we'll touch on that when we come back.
Perfect. And welcome back to Hitting Home. Mike Montague, I'm Arif Khan, and we're talking about really what it's like for people to get used to the idea that our landscape is changing and starting to embrace the idea of living in mixed density and higher density living. And you made some great points in the first segment there, Mike, about the fact that you were down in Toronto and you were noticing that no longer is the idea of a condo just for that young professional or that single person, but there's actually families living in condos. And Joe is going to bring up an article for us but I'll just show it to you here, Mike. I was just reading the Star, and this is not anything that is specific to the GTA, but the article in general is recognizing the fact that over the last couple of decades, we've been embracing the idea of higher density dwelling, and condos have been shooting up. And
it's been happening here at home, but if you go down to the GTA, you see it.
You definitely see it
100 times over. Yeah.
And the biggest thing that all municipalities, and certainly ours, has had to do and is continuing to do is to realize that you can't just sort of approve applications as they come in.
Yes.
There's got to be a plan.
There's other elements that need to go along with that added.
And what the biggest thing that the GTA is noticing right now is that they did allow for condos just to sort of come up, and they were missing in the planning element that other part, the quality of life elements, the what they're talking about, the parks, libraries, transit connections, schools, clinics, and all the other supporting elements that help make a community what it is.
They weren't building complete communities because, as you say, you know, this plan would come forward. Okay, we'll approve that one. We'll approve that one. We'll approve that. We look to our annexation lands where we have the opportunity to do what Don Mills was able to do years ago. Take a total canvas there and create a community.
Right.
So that's where Barrie seems to be getting it right a little bit better than the GTA.
Well, we're able to learn from, right? And I think that's a key. Plus, Canadians and Ontarians, for sure, we've been the era or the age of the car.
Yes.
Everybody got in the car and drove to the grocer. And we're realizing sort of globally and nationally that just doesn't work anymore. It's not what's best. Let's put it that way. It's certainly not the best practice.
And we assume it's just a little sidebar. Again, being in the city last week, I probably walked 40, 50 kilometers being in downtown. And there's a lot of slim, healthy looking people in sneakers in downtown Toronto versus here in Barrie where we drive the 100 yards, 200 yards to the convenience store to pick up something. We think being in the country, being suburban translates to healthier. It's not always the case. It's interesting. When you're in those more walkable downtown, higher density communities, you tend to walk a lot more. And that's kind of what the ideals are that they want to shift back to within urban environments, such as Barrie, as creating walkable communities.
So let's take
areas.
a look at that, because as we're looking now going forward, and again, the point of the session or the segment here is to talk about sort of what's right for me. I think it's important for our viewer to take into consideration what's the quality of life that you personally want for yourself. Are you married? Are you single? Are you? Do you have children? Do you not? Are you working from home? Are you a commuter? Is an active lifestyle part of your daily routine, et cetera? And is it possible to have an active lifestyle and be an active person living in a condo? And the answer obviously is yes. It certainly is yes. But I'm not sure what everybody's preconceived notions are, and I'm not going to plant that seed for anybody in their mind. I'm saying it's a question that should be asked and decide. But you said yourself, Mike, you said, you know, let's take a look at what is it to live in a condo versus to live in a home.
Yeah, and that decision, when made, does not have to be, okay, for my life, my be-all, end-all, I'm going to be in a condo. It may be for a phase, a chapter of your life. You step into home ownership, owning a condo. And at some point down the road, when your kids are teenagers or getting a little older, you might decide, okay, I think we should step over to the detached home model.
Well, I think
so people are moving
there's
around.
a number of reasons.
Choosing them for 20 years. People move every 4 or 5 years.
They do move around. They move to suit their lifestyle. Traditionally,
and
I
they're
would
changing
say.
lifestyles.
And I think it's important to recognize that the built form that we're seeing, the type of housing that we're seeing, whether it's stacked townhomes, back-to-back townhomes, mid-rise condos or condo towers, or detached homes, they're in response to consumer demand.
Yes. And within those various opportunities that we have here in Barrie that you mentioned, 3 of the 5 weren't even available 10, 15 years ago.
They're not, absolutely, they were not available, but we're also recognizing that we're on a global stage in terms of our economy. We've got a number of industries that work sort of three 8-hour shifts, so they're working day, evening, and night shifts, whether that's in our hospital, which is a huge segment of our community. We're not a 9-to-5
city anymore.
No, we're not.
No.
A lot of us, a lot of our businesses are dealing on a global scale as well, import, export, manufacturing, science and technology, data management, programming, all those types of things, website and web-based economies, et cetera. They are working sort of around the clock 24/7. So again, For example, a condo lifestyle might suit someone who is either a traveler or who works a different shift.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I mean, there's something to be said about for being able to lock your door and go away for a few days on business or for a job, et cetera, and not have to worry. Did someone pick up my mail? Did someone cut my grass or shovel my driveway? We have snowbirds. We have people who are in their retirement years who are traveling a number of months of the year.
It's nice to be able to lock the door and turn out the lights.
Yeah.
And say goodbye to your artificial plants and go away for a couple months to
Absolutely.
Florida.
For those who are commuters or for those who live an active lifestyle as well, it's very nice to be able to have a gym downstairs. It's very nice to be able to, certainly you see this a little bit more down in the GTA, or maybe a lot more down in the GTA. Yeah. My walls inside my condo are where I have my sanctuary, but the rest of my life I spend outdoors on the bike trails.
You're
on the
in the
trails.
downtown and you're connected to that underground network. Your whole world exists indoors if you want it to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think what we should look at, though, is a few things over the next remaining minutes of the show. One is, what if you're going to buy, what do you have to take into consideration in terms of down payment? What do you have to take into consideration in terms of finances in general?
Yes.
How
and
do
there
the
are
prices
differences
compare?
in what you can put down on a condo versus a detached.
There
Tell us a bit about that.
There certainly can be, and how do the banks look at it as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's going to be the key. So we've got just maybe one more minute before we go to the break. So let's sort of take a look at that. There are definite differences, and I think if our viewers should take one thing away from it, a lot of people will look at the idea of, well, the same priced house, let's call it round number, a mid $400,000 home, single detached versus a mid $400,000 condominium. They're not created equal because the condo's going to have condo fees.
Exactly.
And I think it's important for the viewer or the person who's going to be looking at purchasing it to realize, well, what is a condo fee?
Well,
What is a
you need
maintenance
to know
fee?
what those condo fees are composed of. And in terms of the detached house, look, over 10 years, you may have to replace a roof. You may have to replace some windows. You're going to be cutting the grass or paying someone to cut the grass, shovel the driveway, paint all your exterior, where it's more than half of your costs in a detached house tend to be outward from your walls out,
right.
Exterior type thing. When you own a condo, the way the condominium product is set up is you own the interior of your unit. The exterior and all the common elements are part of the corporation, which you own your share. If there's 100 units, you own 1/100th of those exterior elements. And you pay 1/100th of the cost of collectively servicing them. So when new windows are needed, when a new roof is needed. So
but in a
where
nutshell,
where I'm going with it's time to replace your roof. It might be $7,000 to $10,000, $12,000 on your detached house. On the condo, you're paying 1/100th. You have economies of scale that come into play. The corporation has negotiated a better price. So effectively, you may be saving money on your exterior.
So let's pick that up.
We'll bring it back.
We'll bring it right back
Yeah.
up because I think we should explore that in greater
for sure.
detail. We'll be right back.
And we're back with Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And just before the break, we were talking about condominium fees and how they can be a stigma or a bit of a fear for some people when they look at the condominium product versus a freehold detached house. But we were looking at what's
the reality of it?
Yeah, what are those condo fees comprised of? That in some cases you're paying as well for the detached home. We talked about just the exterior of the structure, and that's being maintained by the corporation. So you're paying. You may find some savings in there because you're paying 1/100th or 1/150, however many units are in there.
It's important that the buyer doesn't get caught up in the idea that a condo fee is some sort of dark and looming.
It's not an additional cost.
Fee.
It's another way to channel a fee that you're likely to get. And the other thing there is with regards to utilities.
Absolutely.
Sometimes with some condominiums, you will see as you look at the breakdown of what is paid for in those fees. You might find your heat is paid for in some condominium setups. Each corporation has their own set up so they'll vary, but you need to look at those fine details when you're looking to buy. Maybe your electrical is paid.
Right.
Then there's the facilities that come in there. If you want to build a pool in your backyard of your detached home, you've got a cost to put it in, you've got a cost to maintain. Well, you buy into a condo.
Mike, I think the easiest way to sort of package that whole topic is condo fees from day one are keeping a regular fund or a regular, what do you call it, reserve for eventual and ongoing daily maintenance, whereby in detached home ownership, it's up to you to do it on your own.
Exactly.
And this really plays a factor in lending. When a bank is looking to assess your credit qualifications, your ability to buy whichever product it is you're going to buy, they do actually put a bit of a weird spin on condos as they look at that condo liability as a condo fee cost, as a liability. Whereas they do ask all sides, what's your heat and what are your property taxes? But they never ask you how much you're budgeting to put aside for an eventual new roof or AC unit or something like that. Whereas they do in the condos, they're saying, oh, you're paying $400 a month in condo fees? Well, we're going to put that on your debt costs. Servicing. And I do personally think that's unfair because it's a little bit uneducated. And I think what's important is that you're working with a good broker or a good mortgage agent, a good licensed professional to make sure that they're negotiating that intelligently with the lending institution that says, hey, if we're going to compare, let's compare apples to apples.
Exactly. So, and the takeaway from that and from what we talked previously on with regard to condo fees is look to see where the value is. Look, if you're looking at 4 condos in Barrie, break that down. Find out what it is you're getting for your dollar. Like if your condo fees, it's not just about comparing the numbers, is look at what you're getting for those.
It's not who's got the cheapest condo fees.
Yes.
Is it all condo corporations are not-for-profit associations, basically?
They are, yes.
Yeah.
And there's a reserve fund.
There's a reserve fund.
There's no, for-profit motive.
But if you've got tennis courts, swimming pool, gym, et cetera, those are things that are being factored in. If you're in a more simplistic condominium corporation setup where maybe there's just parking and snow removal, and there are no, maybe there's no underground parking, maybe it's all surface parking, your fees are going to be reflected.
And
you
want to see, and your lawyer or accountant will review the certificate for the condominium status certificate just to see how healthy that reserve is. And you want to look at the history. If the condo fees have been going up steadily at an amount that just doesn't seem justifiable, well, it's probably a poorly managed corporation. If you look at the building and you talk to the corps, you find what are your major expenses going to be in the next few years.
So what about age of a condo?
You might see your fees jump up, just to finish the thought. If there's all of a sudden all the new windows are going in and all the new roofs are going in because it's a 20-year-old building and they're at that point, you're going to see a jump in condo fees in that time. So there's a number of things to look at with your lender, look at with your lawyer, and review with regards to condo fees.
So you touched on the age of the building, and I think that's important. And again, that's important regardless of what you're building. If you're buying a resale home that's 20 years old, or you're buying into a condo that's 20 years old, in the condo you may see a jump in condo fees. It is a negotiating point. And it's a little bit tougher to negotiate on behalf of the entire condo corporation as a seller.
Oh, yes.
Right, you can't, as a seller, you can't
the fees
negotiate with the fees.
Yes.
On a detached home, you can go through that inspection and negotiate on price and factor the, maybe the furnace is coming to its end of life cycle, or the roof is looking like it's a little bit, going to need some help in the next couple of years. So those are definitely things to, so again, important to have a good team of people with you.
And fees will go up in a condo over time, because as it ages and as you hit that point where things need to be replaced and improved upon, roofs, exteriors, and everything else, that money, it comes from the reserve, but the reserve has to be topped up, and just, all the other cost of living expenses year over year that go up.
Yeah, so something we should touch on, though, is financing, and we haven't. So it's very important for the viewer and the buyer to recognize that no two deals are the same.
No,
everything,
be it freehold or condo.
Absolutely, and from the qualification perspective, no two deals are the same as well, because credit is going to be a factor, quality of employment, length of employment is going to be a factor. So is the piece of property. But if you're putting 5% down and you qualify for mortgage default insurance through a CMHC, Canada Guarantee, or Genworth, you may have different ability to purchase different properties than if you're going in conventionally. Let's say you don't qualify for mortgage default insurance. or you're choosing to put down more than 20% or more than 15%, because there's a bit of a difference, self-insured versus insured lenders. But if you're going conventional, with the conventional side of lending, there are lenders who actually pull back on what percentage of the value of the house they will actually give you a mortgage for if it's a condo. There are some who actually cap it off at 75% loan to value. And the reason being is they do consider certain elements of condominium tenure to be riskier.
Right.
So the marketability.
Okay.
The marketability is one of them. The fact is that, you know, everybody was fighting for the Lakeview condo downtown in Toronto. So everybody who moved in had the latest and greatest.
Until the next one was built.
Until the one right in front of it went in front of the lake, right? So all of a sudden now the popularity of that condo's gone down, or the marketability or the demand for that condo's gone down. The latest and greatest will always play Trump. We only have 2 minutes, so cut me off where you need to.
I just want to summarize in that, when you'd mentioned that no two deals are alike. No two properties. I think it's safe and fair to say as well that no two lenders are alike either.
Absolutely.
We've got a bit of a plug to shop around with a good mortgage broker who's going to show you what different options are going to be presented to you, because one lender may see red flags that are unwarranted or maybe warranted. Others may see a way to make something work.
So the idea with risk from a lender is the whole idea that lenders don't want to be landlords.
No.
They want to lend you the money as a partner and investor in the transaction with you, and they want their money back.
And the level of risk they're willing to enter into has depreciated considerably in the last couple
if
of years.
you don't pay your bill, though, what is their exposure? They've got to try and sell it. They've got to try and fight for someone to buy it at the market value, and they've got to cover the carrying costs and the condo fees. We've just got 1 minute left.
Well,
Mike, how would you wrap it up?
I would just, our producer Joe, we were talking to earlier, and he was just with regard to what we're talking about, the ongoing investment value of condominium. Is it going to depreciate over time? Is there a chance it will depreciate? There's always a chance anything will
Will it be the same
depreciate.
market for condos as for homes?
Yeah, and whatever percentage they're going up, they tend to rise and hold at similar levels.
So wrap that up. You got 30 seconds.
I would wrap up by just saying, if you are looking to buy a new home for your first home, or if you're out there looking for a change of lifestyle, give some consideration to condominium. Here in Barrie, it's not an anomaly anymore. There are a lot of product on the market, and there's a lot more product coming on board
and
soon.
It's not just high-rise condos. It's going to be mid-rise. It's going to be stacked towns, back-to-back towns, and some of them could be. And we got to go. We're out of time.
A lot of communities.
Thank you for joining us on Hitting Home. See you next time, and thanks to our producer Joe for the good questions as well.
Thank you.